And for further clarity on the latest developments, we have with us senior journalist Dr. Waiel Awwad and Hollie McKay, World War and humanitarian focused writer. Thank you so much for making time for us on NDTV. Dr. Awwad, to you first. To what extent would you say Bashar Assad's rapid ouster in Syria raises the specter of a power vacuum in the Middle East? And also, does it add to further chaos for an already volatile region?
Thank you, Parmeshwar. I think there has been a kind of a deal already between the superpower to have a safe exit for Assad from Syria without making any bloodshed in Damascus or any major cities in Syria. So there was a deal between the United States, Russia, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, and Iran to ensure that he can go out of Syria and give the country to the rebel forces. And that's what happened. That's why it has happened at least a few days before the deadline which was given, and the exit have happened, but the rest remain history, because the current situation in Syria at the moment, we can see it's cautiously very peaceful, but we do not know what next is the future for Syria, because Israel continued to attack a next part of the Syrian, next to the Golan Heights occupied, because in the pretext that there is a military zone and no more that truce between Syria and Israel exists, and they want to save their own security. So therefore, we are facing a very grim future, in fact, in Syria.
Let's also get in a word from Hollie McKay at the moment, Dr. Awwad. Hollie, what does the fall of Assad mean for the future of Syria's ethnic and sectarian divides then? Is the country headed towards a new kind of civil war, or can reconciliation and unity be achieved?
I think, as I said,
the fall of Assad.
Sorry, go ahead, Hollie.
Inevitable. I think it was going to happen at some point. Nobody expected it to happen as quickly as it did. However, he wasn't going to remain in power and for Syria to be a peaceful country. There was too much opposition. As people called it, it was Assad Syria. And there was such a small circle of people around him that, as you can see from around the world, there are very few tears shed. However, we are in a honeymoon phase where there is a lot of celebration. There is a lot of excitement. People feel free for the first time in their life. But inevitably, that will come to an end, and people are going to have to come to the table and decide what kind of Syria they want. And that is going to be the struggle. Syrians haven't had free and fair elections for several decades now, and that is what they're going to want. And if another group comes in and assumes power and doesn't give the Syrian people a voice, then they are going to inevitably end up with another conflict on their hands.
Well, the transition of power does remain at the moment unclear. But Dr. Awwad, as Hollie has said, this could be a honeymoon period. But would you say, actually, could the overthrow of Assad be a precursor to wider regional change, especially regarding authoritarian regimes in the Middle East? What could this actually mean for other long-standing leaders in the region, like in Iran or Lebanon?
Look, we must look at it from the wider perspective of the American interest in the region. Since 2007, the United States have decided to topple 7 countries in the Middle East, including Syria, Lebanon, Iran, Egypt, and even Somalia and Libya. So we understand that this policy has been implemented. Now Syria has been removed. We expect that there could be more grim situation happening in Iran. So the next could be target is to promote extremisms and violence and more of Takfiri Salafist group in this part of the world, to turn it into a hub of a global jihadist. If the Syrian people does not recognize this as an imminent danger facing them, then I think the challenge is very tough and very high for everybody in this part of the world, because next will be Jordan, then Turkey, then also Egypt will be implemented and affected by the changes in the Syrian government. So I think, leaving aside what Assad regime has been doing against his own people, the main objective is to ensure the safety and hegemony of Israel in the region.
Right. Hollie, in reference to Assad's rule, many say there was a nightmare and it's gone. But with Assad now fleeing to Moscow, what does this mean for Russia's influence in the Middle East moving forward?
I think it is a big cause of concern for Russia, because Syria was such a key place for them. It's where they had a lot of weaponry, they had access to the port in the rest of the Middle East, and potentially they've lost that. We do know that Russia is quite good at making deals, so whether they will sit with the jihadists remains to be seen. However, I'm sure at this point there really isn't a willingness, given the very large-scale bombing campaign that Russia carried out in Syria over the past 6 or 7 years. But I think that it also shows that Russia's attention was very much taken, particularly with the war in Ukraine, and coupled with everything that is happening in Lebanon and in Gaza and the weakening of Hezbollah. This was the opportunity that HTS saw to strike. And I think from my sources, what I've heard is the quickness of it even took them by surprise, with the initial goal to go into Aleppo, and then how quickly the Syrian forces were able to fall. The opportunity then opened up to progress to Hama, onto Homs, and then finally Damascus. But I don't think that was in the original plan.
Dr. Awwad, well, it's clear that the downfall of Assad's regime heralds a reshuffling of global power dynamics of sorts. But would you argue that Russia and Iran have the most to lose, considering Tehran long used Syria, while Russia used Syria for strategic access to the Mediterranean, and as Hollie has pointed out, for a few other things?
Honestly speaking, I think the first loser is the Syrian people. And I think the proxy war fought in Syria between the superpower have really yielded no good result for the Syrian people. If you're replacing a so-called secular regimes in Syria with an outfit of a militancy group and more than 35 groups of people, and 70% of them are from Uzbek, Uyghur, and Tajik, that means the future of Syria is already been planned, that it has to be a failed and a raw state and turning it into another Kandahar. So I think that is the problem we are facing. So if definitely the axis of resistance, which is extended from Iran to Syria and Iraq and Lebanon, is also will be affected. Russia will be also at the receiving end. But I don't know what sort of deal that Russia have struck with the Turkish, that they have given them the guarantee to continue with their permanent military bases in the Khmeimim in Syria. Whether it will be remain there or they will pull it out is yet to be seen, because the reshaping of the Middle East is exactly what the American project is there. It is exactly what the Israeli project is there. And what Turkey is also aiming at, the annexing of Aleppo and Idlib province of Syria, is a clear indication that Syrian future, as I said, disintegration and turning into the small ghettos, and this country definitely would suffer. Iran will be the first target for the next Trump administration, as much as Egypt, where they will also erupt into the Muslim Brotherhood, including Jordan and even Turkey in the next decade.
Well, Dr. Awwad, thank you so much for always joining us with your perspective. We wait to see. There are lots of unanswered questions at this stage. Also, post 20th of January, many questions still remain unanswered with the Trump administration coming into the White House. But Dr. Awwad and Hollie McKay, thank you so much for joining us on NDTV and shedding light on different aspects of the latest developments.